Hi everyone, welcome to the channel. Thanks for popping by. Today's review is going to be on the Kershaw Natrix. So the Natrix design is meant to mimic the ZT Zero Tolerance 0770 or 0770 CF, and it does that in a few different ways. So it has the same blade shape, it has the same basic grind, and it has the same scale shape, and even has a 770-like pivot screw on one side of the knife. So the basic specs on this knife, again, I already mentioned it uses a Wharncliffe blade. It uses 8CR13 MOV steel, and the model number from Kai USA is 7007. Again, this is not a US made knife, though. This knife is made in China. If you look closely over here in the corner of the blade, where the blade and the scales meet, it does say China down there in very small laser etching. It has G10 scales with pretty good texturing, and the knife uses Kershaw's speed safe deployment with pretty good lockup. So those are the basics on the Kershaw Natrix. So we're going to do a little side-by-side with a Zero Tolerance 770 series knife. This happens to be the Zero Tolerance 770 CF for carbon fiber. So here's what the two knives look like next to each other. You can see how much they look alike. I will even put these knives right up next to each other to show you that the blade profiles are identical in terms of grind and shape. The handles line up almost perfectly. They have a little bit different back spacer, but the knives are very, very, very similar. As you can see, a lot of similarities between the two knives. Width and shape is going to be almost identical. So that gives you a little glimpse into the big brother version of this knife, the more expensive version made by Zero Tolerance. So let's talk a little bit more about the Natrix here. So it does use a frame lock instead of a liner lock on the ZT. The frame lock is actually attached through a couple of screws here in the back of the knife. The frame lock is inlaid into the G10 and comes in and attaches there. And then also on this other side, you can see there's some frame lock there. And then on the other side of the knife, it's inlaid and attaches here to the side of the knife. So that's what gives it some of its rigidity. The knife does have a nice deep pocket carry clip on the back. It has the same types of cutaway back spacer that comes on the 770. So they did a good job of replicating the knife, the bigger knife. I did weigh this on my digital scale. So the Natrix weighs in at 2.95 ounces, and the 770 CF actually weighed in at 3.06 ounces. So this knife is actually lighter than its more expensive big brother. Let's talk about some pros here. The pros of this knife are that it does have a solid blade design. Again, I mentioned that it uses a Wharncliffe type profile. And it's very lightweight, very, very lightweight. I mean, it's under 3 ounces, so that's a pretty light knife for this size. The lockup on it is good, and it has a really nice deep pocket carry clip. Even though this clip is kind of looks like it's a little on the short side, I have carried this knife a good bit, and this clip does function pretty well. I like that it has this little kick up here. It goes in and out of your pocket pretty well. It doesn't really get caught up on anything. There is less texturing underneath the G10 here. You can see that they changed the texturing, so it's not as aggressive. So it does tend to slide in and out of your pocket, clip on pretty solidly, but slide in and out of your pocket very well. I like that a lot. It was enjoyable to carry. Sometimes you almost forget that this knife is there because it, like I said, it weighs under 3 ounces. So the cons of this knife. I believe this knife would have been better served with either one or two changes to its basic design. I think that it was a mistake to go with the G10 and make it this small. I think you could have textured it and made it a little thicker and squarer like they did on its big brother knife. Why they just didn't copy this knife? It's the same parent company. Kai USA owns both Kershaw and ZT. Why didn't they just copy this knife? It's one of their knives anyway. Make the G10 nice and thick. Maybe make it, a few thousandths of an inch thicker than this carbon fiber. You could have added a lot of rigidity by doing that. And you could have put the texturing that you put on the top of this onto the top of it and made a little bit more solid knife. I think that they tried to make this knife super light, and instead they kind of compromised the durability of this knife long term. That's my big question, is whether these G10 scales, if you really push on these, you can actually get these to flex if you push hard. Only a very little bit, and I don't know that that's necessarily going to compromise the knife. But again, I just wonder, like, you had this knife design in the same family of knives, the same parent company. Why not just completely copy this knife and make this knife? In other words, why did they put this relief cut in the blade? That really wasn't necessary. You could have just made this a flat section of the blade like its big brother. So that really kind of is befuddling. I'm not sure why they decided to make some design changes when the goal was to kind of make this knife as much like the 770 from ZT as possible. And you can tell that they did that in a lot of ways, but then somebody made a decision to try to make this knife even lighter, which they did. But I just don't know if that was the right decision. I do like this knife. I'm not sure that I would buy it again. I bought it to see how I like the Wharncliffe blade and also to see how it stacked up against the 770, which I recently obtained, by the way. So when I talk about this knife, cost-wise, it can be had now for between about $30 to about $35. I don't think you should ever pay more than $40 for this knife, even in a store. It's available pretty readily in the like $35 range. And it does represent a good value. If you're looking for a knife that gets you the basic look and feel of the more expensive ZT770, this is definitely your knife. And also, it's super, super light. Like I said, less than 3 ounces. It has a good pocket carry clip. The blade design, this Wharncliffe blade, cuts and slices really well. But I question the durability of going with such a thin G10 and not really having either a full frame or kind of thicker, more robust G10 handles. Could have kept the same shape, could have kept everything else the same, and just copied what they did on the 770 knife. But again, it's only a $30 to $35 knife. It does cut and slice pretty well. It has good ergonomics. It has the same ergonomics that its big brother has, so it's a comfortable knife to hold in your hand. And if you're looking for a Wharncliffe blade and you've never used one, you want to check one out, this could be a good choice for you. So that's all I've got for today. That was the Kershaw Natrix. I hope you've enjoyed the videos. If you have, please hit like down there. Leave me a comment if you have any questions. And thanks as always for watching. Stay sharp.